A 4-year-old saved a royal residence that day. Not me, not the protection officers, not the cameras, not the lists, not the whole vast expensive machine that exists for exactly this and is supposed to catch exactly this. A 4-year-old boy. By grabbing a fistful of my trouser leg and refusing, flatly, stubbornly, in that absolute way only a very small child can refuse a thing, to let go of it. I've turned it over more times than I can count in the years since. Everything that machine missed, one little prince caught in the space of a heartbeat, because children see what grown-ups have spent their whole lives training themselves to look straight past. We learn to be polite. We learn to give people the benefit of the doubt, to trust the nice suit and the warm smile and the confident voice. Children haven't learned any of that yet. They just feel the thing in the room. And little Theo felt it before any of us, and for some reason I will never entirely understand. When it came down to it, he trusted the big silent man in the ridiculous hat more than he trusted the smiling man who'd come to take him away. Let me tell you how it happened. Because here's the part that still gets me. It should have been the easiest, gentlest day of the whole year. A garden party, sunshine and a band and children on a lawn. The very last place on earth you'd brace for something to go wrong. It was high summer in the capital of Esmark, the proper deep heart of it, and the residence, Brennan House, the family's home in the city, had thrown its gardens wide open for one of those grand charity afternoons they do. You'll know the kind, even if you've never been to one. Hundreds of guests spread out across the lawns, white marquees with their sides rolled up, a band somewhere under the trees playing something soft and old-fashioned that nobody quite listens to, waiters drifting through the crowd with trays held high, that practiced float they have. And sunshine, real sunshine at last, after a solid week of gray wet weather. So the whole party had that slightly giddy, released feeling people get when the sun finally comes out, like everyone's been let off something. Women in hats they'd clearly bought for the day and weren't quite used to. Men sweating politely in good jackets they couldn't take off. Children in their best clothes, scrubbed and combed at noon and already grass-stained and sticky by 2. And the smell of it all, cut grass and warm canvas heating up in the sun, and somebody's strong perfume, and the sweet sugary drift from wherever they were doing the ices. Now it was a public-facing day, but a controlled one. That's important to understand. This wasn't the open street. Every single guest was invited, vetted on a list, checked at the gate. There were officers at every entrance and plainclothes among the crowd, and the whole apparatus humming quietly under the surface of all that genteel summer pleasantness. The family were out among the guests. That was the entire purpose of the afternoon, the charity, the cause, the handshakes and the photographs and the being seen. Relaxed on the surface. As relaxed as those days ever get, which is to say, smiling hard with a great machine running silently underneath. And the family were all there. Every one of them, including the little ones, brought out for a while in their good clothes to be cooed over and then, with luck, whisked off again before the heat and the crowds wore them out. Including the very youngest of them. Prince Theo, 4 years old. I knew Theo a little, the way you come to know the small children of a house when you're posted there regularly, and they're forever underfoot. Children get curious about the guards. They always do. We're like something stepped straight out of a picture book to them, the towering hat, the scarlet coat, the standing so impossibly still. A grown man dressed up like a toy soldier who won't move and won't smile and won't react no matter what you do. To a small child, that's the most fascinating puzzle in the world, and they'll stand there working at it, pulling faces, doing little dances, trying every trick they've got to make the statue laugh. And the rule, of course, is that you don't. You hold. You're a fixed point. You give them nothing, not a smile, not a flicker, not a glance. That's the whole of the job and the whole of the discipline. But little Theo had taken a particular shine to my post, over the months I'd been there. And I'll be honest with you, privately behind the stone face, I had a soft spot for the lad. You're not supposed to, but you're human under it all, and some of them get to you. He was a funny little character, Theo, watchful in a way that was almost grown-up, and stubborn, famously, legendarily stubborn, the kind of stubborn that got talked about below stairs with a sort of despairing admiration. The nannies had stories. He was the sort of 4-year-old who would decide a thing, that he would not wear the blue shoes, that he would not eat the green things, that he would sit there and nowhere else, and then no force known to man or crown could shift him off it. He'd plant those little feet, and set that little jaw, and simply outlast every adult in the room. It drove them all to distraction. But here's the thing I'd noticed, watching him from my post over those months. The stubbornness wasn't just temper. There was something shrewd running underneath it. He noticed things. He'd go quiet and still and then point at something clear across a crowded room that not one of the grown-ups had clocked, a thing out of place, a person who didn't fit. He had that. Whatever that is, the thing some children have before the world teaches them not to trust it. That afternoon, somewhere in the thick of all the garden party hum, he drifted over toward my gate, trailing a nanny who'd been pulled away for half a moment by some small crisis with another child, a spilled drink, a scraped knee, the ordinary chaos of small children at a party. And Theo, briefly unminded, had done what he always did. Come and parked himself right by my boots, down at the foot of my post, gazing up at me with that serious little face, mounting his daily campaign to make me crack. And that, of all the spots in all those wide green gardens for one small boy to be standing, turned out to be the single most fortunate place in the entire world. Because a man came to the East Gate. I should explain about the East Gate because it matters. I wasn't on the grand front entrance that day, the one all the proper guests swept through with their invitations. I was on the East Gate, the garden gate, the working one, opening onto the quieter side street round the back where the cars came and went. Deliveries, staff, guests being dropped and collected. The less glamorous traffic of a big event, the comings and goings that the front-of-house crowd never sees. Which meant I had eyes on a stream of faces that the main entrance didn't, the in-between people, the practical arrivals and departures. And this man came up to my gate from the street side, where a car sat idling at the curb with its engine softly running. He was well turned out, a pale linen suit just right for the weather, good shoes, a watch that caught the light, middle-aged, a pleasant, open, unremarkable face, the kind you forget 2 minutes after seeing it, which I've since learned is its own sort of qualification, and a smile, a warm, ready, easy smile switched on the moment he reached the gate. The whole of him said belongs here, said it fluently. He had the manner down perfectly, the relaxed confidence of a man who's been to 100 parties like this one, and is mildly, charmingly bored of them. He stopped at the gate, and had a few easy words with the officer working the list. And this is the part that made it all so very nearly work, the part that still puts a chill through me. He had a name. He was on the list, or close enough to it that the officer's eye snagged on something plausible. He talked beautifully. He dropped the family's first names into it, lightly, casually, the way only a real intimate does, not their highnesses, but the easy familiar names, the ones you'd only use if you truly knew them. He said he'd come for young Theo. That the parents had asked him quietly to run the little one home early, before the boy got overtired and fractious in all the heat. That it had all been arranged, a touch informally perhaps. You know how these things are on the day, everything a bit last minute, but arranged all the same. And it was plausible. God help us, it was so plausible. A trusted family friend, a known face, slipping in the back way to take a tired 4-year-old quietly home before the afternoon wore him out. It is the most ordinary thing in the world. It happens at every event like this. There was nothing in it, nothing on the surface, to ring a single bell. The officer hesitated, glanced at his list, found something near enough, and began, and this is the moment my blood still runs cold over, began to wave the man through, in toward the gardens, in toward where one small boy stood at the foot of my post, looking up at me, with nobody's hand in his. The man stepped through, crouched down onto his haunches with that easy grace. That warm smile spread right across his face, and held out his hand toward the child. "Theo, there you are, little man." His voice was lovely, gentle, delighted, exactly the voice you'd use with a child you adored. "Come on now, your mum asked me to take you home. Shall we get you in the car? We'll have you back before you know it." And he held out his hand. And Theo looked at him. I was taking all of this in, of course, from the post. Eyes front, officially, the way they're meant to be, but you learn over 20 years to gather a remarkable amount from the very corner of your eye without ever turning your head. And something in it had already laid a small cold finger on the back of my neck before the child ever moved. I couldn't have told you what. I couldn't have named it if you put a medal on it. Just wrong. A single note slightly flat in a song you've heard 10,000 times. You don't hear the note so much as feel it. A wrongness with no face on it yet. But it was Theo who knew. That's the thing, I had a feeling. Theo had certainty. Because that little boy looked up at the smiling, well-dressed, entirely plausible man crouched in front of him with his hand held out. And he did not go to him. He didn't beam back, the way children do at a familiar grown-up. He didn't toddle forward into the warmth of that practiced smile. He did the opposite of all of it. He took a step backward, away, right back into me, into the solid bulk of my legs, and his small hand came up and closed around a fistful of my trouser leg and gripped it, hard, his little knuckles going pale with it, and he pressed the whole of his small body against the back of my legs as if he were trying to get behind me. Into cover. And he would not let go. I felt it through the cloth. That grip. There's nothing like it, the grip of a frightened child who has decided you are safe. It goes straight past the uniform, past the discipline, past all of it, and lands somewhere very old in you. The man's smile flickered. Just for an instant. A hairline crack across it there and gone, but I caught it, and once you've caught a thing like that you can't uncatch it. Then the smile came back, wider, warmer, working harder now. "Come on, Theo," he said, and there was the faintest new thing under the lovely voice, the faintest tightening. "Don't be silly now, eh? We'll stop for an ice cream on the way, how about that?" And Theo, 4 years old, pressed hard into the back of my legs, did not look at the man. He looked up at me, and in a small, clear, steady voice, steadier than you'd think a frightened 4-year-old could manage, the steadiness of absolute certainty, he said the thing I will carry to the end of my days. "That's not the man. Mummy said the man would know my song." I didn't understand it, not in that second. The man would know my song. The words meant nothing to me at all. A song? What song? It was the sort of thing small children say, half nonsense, and on any other afternoon I might have heard it as exactly that. But I didn't hear it as nonsense, because of the grip, because of the flicker in that smile, because of the cold finger that had already been resting on my neck before the boy said a word. The words meant nothing to me, but they clearly meant everything to Theo. They were not nonsense to him. They were the most important fact in the world, and he had just handed it to me, the way a child hands you the one true thing they know, and trusted me to do something with it. And I had all at once, 2 things in front of me, demanding a decision in the space of a single breath. On one side, a small child who had just backed away from a smiling stranger and seized hold of a guard like he was the last solid thing on a sinking ship, and told that guard plainly that this was the wrong man. On the other, that smiling man whose smile had flickered, whose voice had tightened, now leaning in over the gate, hand still extended, saying, "Theo, come on now," with something gone hard and impatient under the warmth, and beginning, as he said it, to step forward. Onto the grass, past the officer, onto the grounds, toward the child. And every instinct I owned, every one of 20 years of them, the instincts you can't put into words and can't put into a report, the ones that are the only reason men like me are any use at all, every single one of them lit up at once, the whole board going red. You learn in this job to trust that feeling, the flat note in the song, the smile that cracks for half a heartbeat, And above all, the child who knows something you don't. You cannot always say why. You will not always be able to justify it afterward in the clean light of an office. But when a 4-year-old who trusts you grabs your leg with both his small fists and tells you the smiling stranger is wrong, you do not stand there being polite. You do not give the nice suit the benefit of the doubt. Not with a child behind your legs, not ever. I moved. I stepped sideways one hard step and put the whole bulk of myself square between the man and the boy. My body, the full mass of the uniform, a wall of red and black dropped down between them. I brought my arm across, blocking the open gate, and I said it in the voice that lives down somewhere you almost never need, the one that comes up flat and hard and carries. Stop, stay where you are. And then I did the thing this whole story is named for. I did not wait. I did not check the list. I did not ask his name or radio for a quiet word or give him the chance to talk his lovely way out of it. With my free hand I reached for my radio and I raised it, not a query, not a can someone come and look at this. The full call. The lockdown. The words that bring the entire protection machine crashing down on a royal residence inside of seconds. Every alarm live, every gate sealed, every officer moving. I activated everything. Over a 4-year-old's grip on my trouser leg, and one strange sentence about a song. If I had it wrong, if that man turned out to be exactly who he said, an innocent family friend humiliated at the gate, while a paranoid guard screamed lockdown over a shy child, then I would be the biggest fool in the whole kingdom of Esmark, and there would be a reckoning, and it would land on me, and rightly. I knew all of that in the half-second it took to key the radio. I weighed it, and I keyed it anyway. Because Theo's hand was shaking against the back of my leg now, I could feel it, that fine tremor, and a 4-year-old does not shake like that over a friend. And the man at the gate, the instant the radio call left my mouth, the instant he understood what those words meant, stopped smiling. Completely, all at once. The warmth went out of his face like a light switched off at the wall, and what was left underneath it for just a moment before he caught himself was something else entirely. Something cold and quick and calculating, the face under the face. And that 1 second of the real thing showing through told me everything I needed to know, and everything Theo had known from the very first. And that's where I have to leave the first part of it. Because the next 60 seconds were chaos of a kind that Garden Party had never seen. The alarm going up across the grounds, the band faltering, the man at the gate making a fast, ugly choice about what to do now that the warm smile had stopped working and a wall of a guard stood between him and the child. The car in the street, engine running, waiting. Theo's grip like iron on my leg and his small body pressed into the back of mine. And me planted between them with exactly one job left in all the world, that nobody got past me to that boy. I didn't yet know who the man really was. I didn't know what he'd wanted, or who'd sent him, or how he'd got a name close enough to a list to nearly walk straight through. And I certainly didn't know about the song, what it was, why a 4-year-old had a song that a real family friend would know and a false one wouldn't, and what it told me, when I finally understood it, about a quiet, frightened, clever mother who had sat her little boy down one day and taught him something I've never been able to forget. I only knew this much, standing in that bright summer garden with a prince clinging to the back of my legs. The whole enormous, costly, humming machine had been one polite nod away from waving a stranger through to collect a child. And the only thing in the world that stopped it, the single, slender, unlikely thing, was a 4-year-old who trusted a guard, and a guard who, when it counted, trusted a 4-year-old. The statue moved, and it moved because a child told it to. The thing about a royal lockdown is how fast it is, and how loud the quiet gets first. There's a half-second after the call goes out where nothing happens. The garden party is still a garden party, the band still playing, a woman somewhere laughing, And then it lands and the whole afternoon changes register all at once, like a held breath let go. You hear it before you see it. The band stops mid-phrase. Voices on radios all across the grounds, clipped and urgent. And then movement, fast movement. From every direction at once. Plainclothes officers who'd been drifting through the crowd a moment ago now running, converging, hands going inside jackets. The man at the gate heard it too, and he understood exactly what it meant. And he ran. He was quick, I'll give him that. The moment the warm smile died and the cold thing showed underneath, he'd already started recalculating. And the instant the alarm confirmed it, he turned on his heel and bolted back toward the street, toward the car still idling at the curb, its engine running, its door already swinging open. He didn't get to it. He'd made one fatal miscalculation, the same one I think the whole plan had rested on. He'd assumed the only obstacle was the officer with the list, a man he could talk past. He hadn't waited the guard, because who waits the guard? We're scenery. We're the photo. Nobody plans around the man in the funny hat because everyone's been trained, same as the tourists, to see a statue and not a person. But I'd come off my post the second I keyed that radio, and I was between him and the gate, and 20 years of standing still doesn't mean you can't move when you have to. I didn't go for him, my job wasn't him. My job was the child, and you never leave the child to chase the threat. That's the first thing you learn. But I'd shifted the whole bulk of myself into the gateway, blocking it, and he checked, just for an instant, finding a wall where he'd expected open ground. That instant was all the officers needed. They came down on him from 3 sides. There was a short, ugly scramble he fought briefly, the way a cornered man does, and then he was face down on the lawn with 3 officers on him, and his linen suit ruined with grass stains, and it was over. The car in the street tried to pull away and didn't make it far. They'd sealed the side street within seconds. The driver was taken too. And through all of it, the running, the shouting, the men hitting the grass, Theo never let go of my leg. Not once. He'd buried his face into the back of my knee and he held on with both hands and he shook, and I stood there like the wall I was supposed to be, the one fixed point in all that chaos, and I let him hold on. His mother reached us within the minute. I'll never forget that either. The princess, Theo's mother, coming across that lawn at a dead run, no dignity, no composure, a mother and nothing else, shoes in her hand, calling his name. And Theo heard her and finally let go of my leg and turned and ran into her. And she went down on her knees on the grass and gathered him up and held him so tight, rocking her face in his hair, saying his name over and over. And then she looked up at me, over the top of her son's head, and what was on her face I don't have a clean word for. It wasn't only gratitude, though there was that. It was something closer to terror arriving late, the full understanding of what had nearly happened crashing into her all at once, now that it was already over. He knew, I said to her, because I didn't know what else to say and because she needed to hear it. Ma'am, he knew. He told me. He said you'd told him the right man would know his song. He wouldn't go to him. He came to me instead. And the princess closed her eyes, and a sound came out of her, half a sob, half a laugh, the sound a person makes when a thing they prepared for, hoping they never would need it, actually worked. The song, she whispered. Oh God, he remembered the song. She told me about it later. Some of it then, on the grass, in pieces, the rest in the days after, when she sought me out specifically to tell me, which still amazes me, that she made the time in the middle of everything to find the guard and explain. It was simple, so simple it breaks your heart a little. Some months before, she'd done a thing that a lot of careful parents do, royal or not, though for her family it carried a sharper edge. She'd sat her 4-year-old down, quietly, no fear, made a little game of it, and she'd taught him a code. A safe word of sorts, but for a child too young to remember a word reliably, she'd made it a song. A silly little made-up tune, just a few lines that she and Theo's father, and the small handful of people genuinely trusted to ever collect him all knew. The rule in his small, simple terms: if a grown-up ever comes to take you somewhere, even a nice grown-up, even one who knows your name and they don't know your song, then they're not the right grown-up. You don't go. You find a safe person, a guard, a police lady, and you stay with them. She'd practiced it with him, made it fun. Sung it at bath time, at bedtime, turned it into a game where she'd pretend to be a stranger and he'd catch her out gleefully every time, because she'd forgotten the song. She told me she'd half wondered if it was paranoid, if she was frightening him over nothing, if a 4-year-old would even hold on to it when it mattered, or whether it'd evaporate the moment a real smiling stranger crouched down in front of him. You spend so long teaching them, she said, and you never know if any of it actually goes in. You just have to trust that some of it does. And then, her voice gave out, and then a man you've never seen crouches down in front of your baby with his hand out, and your whole world is balanced on whether a 4-year-old remembers a song you made up in the bath. And he had. Theo had looked at a perfect stranger, run the test his mother had drilled into him, found the man failed it, he doesn't know my song, and acted on it, backed away, found the safe person, held on. A 4-year-old executed a security protocol flawlessly, while 3 layers of trained adults nearly waved the threat straight through. Who was the man? I only ever learned the shape of it. I'm a guard. The full picture went into rooms far above me, but the shape was bad enough. He was not a lone opportunist. That was the part that turned my stomach when I understood it. This had been planned, studied. He'd known things, the family's first names, the rhythm of the household, enough about that day's guest list to get a near-match name through a harried officer, the existence and routine of the youngest child. Someone had done their homework. The plan had a getaway car and a driver and a window, the chaos of a big party, a tired child, an informal back gate chosen with care. It had been built to exploit exactly the one weakness a controlled event like that has. The moment where a known-seeming face asks to do an ordinary-seeming thing, and politeness and plausibility do the work that no fence ever could. What they wanted with the child, I'll be honest with you, I don't know the whole of it, and I won't invent it. The most likely answer is the ugliest and oldest one, where children of powerful families are concerned, and I'll leave it at that. What I know for certain is that it was deliberate, and it was close, and it very nearly succeeded, and the gap it nearly succeeded through was the gap that every single one of these operations goes for: human politeness. The reluctance of a decent person to be rude to a nice man in a nice suit. Theo wasn't polite. Thank God. 4-year-olds aren't burdened with it yet. He just felt the wrongness and acted on it, the way we all could if we hadn't trained it out of ourselves. Here's the part I've thought about most in the years since. The part that's really about all of us, not just that day. The machine didn't fail because it was bad. It was a good machine, full of good, careful people. It nearly failed because of the one thing no machine can fully close: the human instinct to trust the plausible. The officer at the gate wasn't lazy. He was polite. He saw a respectable man with a near-right name and a warm manner and a reasonable story, and his decent human reluctance to cause a scene over nothing did exactly what the plan needed it to do. That's not a flaw in him. That's a flaw in all of us. It's how nearly every one of these things works, not by breaking through the wall, but by being waved through the gate with a smile. And the only thing in that whole garden that wasn't running the be polite, give him the benefit of the doubt program was a 4-year-old, and a guard who'd learned over 20 years to trust the 4-year-old over his own politeness. That's the lesson I took from it, and I've never put it down. The cost of being wrong, of raising the alarm, of being rude, of causing a scene, of looking like a paranoid fool, that cost is real, and it's embarrassing, and it stings. But it is nothing, it is less than nothing, weighed against the cost of being polite one time too many. I would rather have screamed lockdown over 100 innocent men in nice suits than have stood there being courteous for the 5 seconds it would have taken that man to walk a prince out a gate. I'd have looked a fool 99 times. The 100th time is the only one that matters. And that's where the second part has to end. Because there was an aftermath, of course. A serious one. Hard questions for everybody about how a planned approach got that close. The list, the gate, the gap. Changes made quietly in the weeks after. A frightened, grateful family. And a guard pulled into rooms to explain again and again why he'd raised a full lockdown over a child's grip and a sentence about a song, and every time given the only answer there was, because the child knew and I believed him. And there was Theo, who came through it in the resilient way small children do, far better than the grown-ups around him, who'd understood the full weight of it. But who'd been changed by it too, in a small way, the way these things change you. Because the next time I was on my post and he came toddling over to plant himself by my boots and try to make me smile, there was something different in how he looked up at me now. Not fear, the opposite. A kind of solemn 4-year-old recognition, like we shared something, like he understood in whatever way a child that age understands anything that he and I had done a thing together that day, that when it had counted, the statue had been on his side. And what his mother did, to thank the man who'd believed her son, and what Theo himself did in his own small way weeks later is the last part of it. It's the part that turned a near disaster into the thing I'm actually proud of. They questioned me for a long time after. Of course they did. You don't raise a full lockdown on a royal residence in front of 300 guests and a charity's worth of press without having to account for every second of it afterward. I sat in rooms. I told it and told it again. When did you first feel something was wrong? What exactly did the child say? At what point did you decide to raise the alarm? Walk us through the seconds. And underneath all the official process, I could feel the same thing I'd felt the morning of the garden party, the thing nobody quite says in those rooms. Because the awful truth they were all circling was this. If I'd been wrong, if that man had turned out innocent, I'd have been hung out to dry. A guard who screamed lockdown over a shy child and humiliated a family friend would have been a story, a problem. A man quietly moved on. I'd been right, and being right was the only thing standing between me and disgrace. That's a thin line to have your career balanced on, the difference between hero and fool being which way a stranger's plan happened to fall. One of the senior people said it to me near the end, much the way the senior man in my old getaway car story once had. You understand, he said, that the protocol says you should have queried it first, radioed for a supervisor to assess, not gone straight to full lockdown. I do, sir, I said. And you understand that if you'd queried it first, those extra seconds might have been all he needed to get the child to that car. I understand that too, sir. He looked at me a long moment. Then we have a protocol that's wrong, he said quietly, and a guard who was right. We'll fix the protocol, don't you change a thing. That was the closest to a commendation I ever got, and it was enough. They did fix things, quietly the way they do. I never learned the half of it that's above me, but the gaps that man had walked toward got closed in the weeks after. The list procedures at the working gates, the rules about collecting children, the whole polite, plausible, known-face loophole that the plan had been built to exploit got a hard look it hadn't had before. But the thing they couldn't put in a protocol, the thing that had actually saved the day, was the song, and that the family kept, not just for Theo. I heard later that the practice spread quietly through the household, through the wider family even. The bath time game, the silly tune, the simple rule for a small child. If they don't know your song, they're not your grown-up, and you find a safe person and you stay. A frightened, clever mother's homemade idea, half wondered if it was paranoid, became something the whole family used. Because it had worked once, for real when it mattered most, in the 1 second everything depended on it. The princess came to find me about a week after. That still astonishes me. In the middle of everything, the investigation, the fear, the sheer weight of what had nearly happened to her child, she made the time to seek out the guard. Not a note passed down through staff. Her in person. She found me near my post on a quiet morning and she stopped, and the protection officers with her stepped back to give us a moment, and she just looked at me for a second before she could speak. "I've thanked a lot of people this week," she said. "The officers, the team, everyone did their job." She paused. "But I wanted to thank the one who did something that wasn't in his job. You weren't supposed to come off your post. You weren't supposed to raise it over a child grabbing your leg. Any sensible man would have waited, queried it, played it safe for his own sake." Her voice tightened. "You didn't. You believed a 4-year-old over your own career, and my son is here because you did." I didn't have anything clever to say to that. I said the truth. "He didn't grab just anyone, ma'am," I said. "He decided over a lot of months that this post was safe, that I was safe. I just had to be worth the decision he'd already made about me." I paused. "He did the hard part. He's the one who looked a stranger in the eye and said no. I only believed him." She nodded slowly and her eyes were wet and she said, "He's 4. He shouldn't have had to do any of it." "No," I agreed. "He shouldn't have, but he could, and thank God he could." Here's the part I actually treasure, though. Theo's part. A few weeks on, things had settled into the ordinary again. The garden quiet, the marquise long gone. The press moved on to the next thing. And I was on my post one afternoon when the little prince came toddling over, the way he always had, a nanny trailing him at a polite distance. But he didn't try to make me smile this time. He didn't pull his usual faces or do his little campaign. He stood there at the foot of my post, very serious, very solemn, looking up at me with that grave little face. And then he held something up, both hands an offering. It was a drawing. Of course it was. Wax crayon pressed hard the way they do. And it took me a moment to work out what I was looking at, and when I did, I had to fight my own face harder than I have ever fought it on duty. It was me, unmistakably, a great tall figure in red and black with a mad scribble of black for the bearskin, twice the height of everything else on the page. And next to the big figure, a tiny one, a small round child, holding the big one's hand. And over both their heads, floating in the crayon sky, he'd drawn a row of little shapes I couldn't make out at first. I worked it out. Notes, musical notes, wobbly 4-year-old crayon musical notes drifting in the air above the two of them. The song. He'd drawn us the song. And along the bottom, in a grown-up's careful hand, his mother's, I think, helping with the letters, it said, "You knew my song too." I keep that drawing, same as I'd keep any of the few true things this job ever gave me. You knew my song too. Because that's exactly it, isn't it? That's the whole thing, really. The song wasn't only a password. It was a way of asking one question. Are you safe? Are you really one of mine? The stranger didn't know it. And somehow in his small, certain 4-year-old heart, Theo had decided that I did. That the big silent statue at the gate was, in the way that actually counts, one of his. He was right, I was. I think about politeness now, more than I ever did before that day. Because that's the real lesson of it when you strip everything else away. The man very nearly succeeded not by force, not by stealth, but by plausibility. By being a nice man in a nice suit with a reasonable story. And the thing that nearly carried him through was the most ordinary, decent human instinct there is the reluctance to be rude, to cause a scene, to insult a respectable person by treating him like a threat. The officer at that gate wasn't careless. He was courteous. And courtesy is exactly the door these things come through. It's a strange thing to have learned and an uncomfortable one. That decency has a blind spot in it, and the blind spot is shaped exactly like a smiling man with a good story. That's sometimes the safest thing, the most loving thing, is to be willing to be wrong out loud, to raise the alarm, to make the scene, to be the fool, rather than to be polite 1 second too long. A 4-year-old knew it instinctively. We spend our whole lives unlearning it. We teach our children to be polite, to trust nice grown-ups, to not make a fuss, and we forget to teach them the other half, The half that frightened mother got exactly right. That no is allowed. That you can refuse the warm hand. That the right grown-up will know your song, and the wrong one won't. And when in doubt, you find a safe person and you hold on and you don't let go no matter how silly it feels. Theo held on. Through the chaos, through the shouting, through everything, he held onto my leg and he didn't let go until his mother was there. Because his mother had taught him the most important thing you can teach a child, underneath the song and the game and all of it. That trusting the wrong feeling can be undone, but trusting the wrong person sometimes can't. So when in doubt, when something feels off in a way you can't name, when a note rings flat in a song you know, you make the scene. You raise the alarm. You be the fool. A whole garden full of grown-up people that day were ready to be polite. And one 4-year-old wasn't, and neither for once was the statue at the gate. That's the only reason there's a drawing on my wall, instead of a hole in a family that never healed. Trust the child, trust the off note, and never ever be too polite to be wrong.